you're having that tsunami-sized response to things, it's generally that you can't control your blood sugar. Now, the best way to do that is to avoid said sugars and actually concentrate more on protein.
Welcome to the Tomorrow Is Not Today podcast. You've already started to create the life you want just by being here. Designed for you as a business professional so you can be physically, mentally and emotionally healthy, more productive, less stressed and living a life you truly love. My name's Kingsley and thank you for coming on another journey with one of our uniquely qualified professionals. Okay, Rochelle, thank you so much for joining us on the Tomorrow Is Not Today podcast.
Thank you.
It's great to have you in here. I cannot wait to get into this subject. It's something that to me is the very foundation of everything else that we actually do. So, also known as the no-nonsense naturopath. First of all, tell me about that, and then I've got a really big question I need to ask you.
I am known as the no-nonsense naturopath because I truly and firmly believe that health doesn't have to be hard, but you've got to call things as they are.
Oh, this is going to get interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to start with, I can't wait to get into that further, but I'm going to start with a question to start with, like we always do, a big question. Why do we need to know what's going into our bodies? If we're business professionals, we're focused on business and what's happening there. What has it got to do? Why is it so important what goes on in our bodies?
This really is the pivotal thing. Under the right circumstances, given everything that it needs, the body has an amazing ability to do everything you need to ask of it. Whether it needs to heal, whether it needs to be creative, whether it needs to have energy, the body can really put you in the best place that you need to be. So, of course, we need to know what we're putting into our bodies because we actually need to provide for ourselves.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, okay. So now, based on what you said right at the beginning, whereas your body can basically do anything we want it to do, how does that relate to how what you just talked about, what goes into our bodies and be able to be creative and everything else that we need to do?
How does that relate? It's actually, health doesn't have to be hard. It's actually very, very simple. I mean, it's very, very complex as well, don't get me wrong. But from an individual's point of view, there are only a few things that we need to really consider. We need to consider our, energy intake in. We need to consider, sleep. We need to consider how much hydration we get. But all of these things are just really simple tools and very simple tweaks to actually function really optimally.
Okay, let's get into that. How do we actually do that? So energy in. How do we get the energy in? Because a lot of us get to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we need that boost, whether it's a coffee, whether it's a Mars bar or something else ultra healthy. We need something inside of us to be able to keep going, or we think we do.
Yep.
So that's one of the things with energy. And often getting up in the morning, just getting out of bed, that can be a mission because we don't feel like it. Tell me more about energy.
That is actually the same story over and over again. People that need to grab for food and that buzz in the afternoon there, or people that wake up feeling tireder than when they went to bed, people that wake up during the night. This all has to do with a dysregulation in your blood sugar.
That's a big word.
It is. But what we need to do is stabilise our blood sugar so that we don't get those energy dips. So when our blood sugar drops, our body tells us to quickly go and grab something to elevate it back to a normal level again. What we want to do is we want to avoid tsunami-sized waves of these. And it's a hormonal response, but we have absolute control over it. We want to get rid of the tsunami-sized hormonal waves and we just want to have nice, gentle, let's coast sort of waves.
Like a kid learning to surf at Currumbin.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we bring it from the tsunami to the nice, easy waves?
Okay. When you're having that tsunami-sized response to things, it's generally that you can't control your blood sugar. Now, the best way to do that is to avoid said sugars and actually concentrate more on protein. Protein is actually our innate hunger response. If under perfect circumstances, and if everything was balanced, your hunger is driven by protein. So what we need to do is very simply, just every time you eat or snack, and we might talk about snacking at some other time, but every time you eat, just make sure there's some protein. Because the beauty with protein is that it naturally comes with the right balance of fats as well. And contrary to belief in popular media, fats are very, very important for health.
Okay, let's dive into that a little bit, because that's right there, I think, is something that a lot of people are very unaware of. And we don't generally go, okay, lunchtime, what protein am I going to eat today for lunch? So give me some very practical, down-to-earth, I'm having breakfast, I need some energy, I'm having breakfast, I've got a big day at work. What do I do?
Eggs.
Eggs.
They're the perfect little package. They're the perfect package of protein, of fats, of vitamins, of minerals. They've got everything.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, if you're vegan, maybe not so much.
Yeah. So what else can we do apart from eggs? Give me a few options.
Well, there's the meats if you are a carnivore of sorts. But I mean, I think we historically limit what we think about of breakfast food. I'm very well known, especially in the middle of summer, to get up at 3:30 in the morning and grill myself a piece of salmon.
Okay.
Who says that we can't have our main meal whenever we feel like it? And as a university student of years back, pizza always tastes better the next morning. Not that I'm necessarily recommending pizza, but we need to think that breakfast does not, and probably should not, be a bowl of cereal or a piece of toast and jam.
Okay, so there's not a lot of protein there.
Have a salad with legumes, with chickpeas in it if you want.
Okay.
But the good old standard egg is actually quite good for most people because it's kind of considered a breakfast food, but it's very versatile as well.
Okay. And what about things like yogurt and berries and that sort of thing? Is that protein, or is that just something totally different altogether?
Look, yogurt does have protein. Some have more than others. What I would say, especially if you're one that struggles with energy sort of issues, is you really need to look at the amount of added sugars that are in things, and yogurt can be a very sneaky one for that. But I mean, if you're looking at, a plain Greek yogurt, and if you need to make it a little bit sweeter, a much healthier option is to, say, add some berries, because berries are generally low in sugar, but they're still sweet to our imagination, I guess. So, some berries and yogurt's quite a good thing. Now, if you want to increase the protein value a little bit more, throw in some pepitas or some other nuts and seeds just to give it a little bit of crunch as well.
Okay, awesome. So that's breakfast done. Now and come around, let's go have a look at lunch, because lunchtime obviously is a big one. Quite often we get to that 11, 12 o'clock and we're starting to get a bit hungry. And we know 2 or 3 o'clock's just around the corner, where most of us are at least self-aware enough to know that at that time something's going to drop off and I'm just not going to be able to focus and I'm going to become tired. What do we do there?
Okay, there are a couple of things. We are programmed, some more so than others, to tend to limit what we eat. Don't have things that are too big. Cut things out. What we do need to do is eat until we're comfortable. So make sure your lunch is reasonably filling. But have a piece of protein, whether that's chicken, whether that's tofu, whether that's whatever. Throw some lovely veg or salad with it. But if you can make sure that there's some sort of fat or oil with it as well, it's the fats that sustain your hunger impulses, I guess, so that you can push yourself through. Theoretically, there's probably 5 hours between lunch and dinner. We should, as a species, be able to go 5 hours without food.
Okay. So we got our protein and a bit of fats in there. What else can we get maybe some fats from for lunch?
Well, it really depends on the protein that you're having, but, sources, especially if you're making your own, it's a little more difficult when you're out and about. But there are sources, the good old hollandaises or the, even mayonnaise. Actually, we should say aiolis. The difference between an aioli and a mayonnaise is sugar. So there are sources out there. Butter. Butter makes everything better. But once again, if you have a decent serving of protein, most proteins come with fats built in. Nature does it that way.
You are saying a bunch of controversial things right now.
Oh,
like you're
well.
telling me to eat more butter,
Yep.
but the media is telling me it's bad for me.
Mm-hmm. The
What's-
media needs to pull its head in. Whoops, sorry. I'm the no-nonsense naturopath. In my opinion, the very most detrimental piece of health advice we've been given over the last 100 years is the anti-fat message.
Right.
Fats form the basis for so many things in our body. Our hormone production is largely dependent for cholesterol as the primary ingredient for our hormones. Everyone's trying to lower their cholesterol to zero, and they actually don't have the basic ingredients for hormonal control, including their stress hormones, which puts them under more stress, which means they need more. And we can get ourselves into really tight conditions like that.
So we're putting ourselves in a downward spiral by getting rid of things like cholesterol because we know we've got to get rid of cholesterol. And so that actually makes our hormone regulation go down so that we're more affected by our hormones and emotions and things like that as well, I would imagine.
Correct.
Because we're not having the right foods and things.
Correct.
Wow.
And if we think of our great-grandparents, for instance, they ate meat and dairy all the time.
Mm.
They didn't suffer from the high levels of cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, type 2 diabetes, all the things that we're seeing, the chronic inflammatory health conditions that we're seeing now. So one has to ask whether we kind of got the messaging wrong.
It's really interesting because just as you're saying all this, thinking back to, spending time with grandparents and uncles and aunts and that sort of thing. And there was plenty of butter. I used to regularly as a kid go to some relatives' places that had a dairy farm. So there was no shortage of real milk that hadn't had anything done to it. There was plenty of cookies and baked goods and that sort of thing, lots of veggies and lots of meat thrown around on a regular basis. So you're telling me that all what we're told that's apparently bad, but actually that's probably actually really good.
If you consider the traditional Mediterranean diet, whether we're talking Greek or Italian, they don't sit there trimming their beef or cutting out butter or any of that sort of thing, but they have an abundance of beautiful food and it balances in a very loving way, really.
Yeah. Wow. So bringing that all back around to business people mostly, because that's who we mostly talk to on this podcast. So it's a matter of thinking about the proteins and the good fats and all this sort of thing and making sure we do have a fair amount of that in our food, probably a few times a day.
Yep.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can't wait to get some feedback on this podcast. This is going to be so good. So now, in regards to that, because one of the big things that's come up at the moment, and I think is becoming more and more a topic that people are aware of, and it probably doesn't go too far past that, and this obviously has a lot to do with it, is our gut health. Now, having spoken with you previously, I think I've got the message right that pretty much the gut health is the center of pretty much most things, if not everything. Would that be correct?
I would absolutely say that you're correct in that.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit more about how we keep our gut health? And I know this is a big question. How we keep our gut healthy, that's probably the wrong terminology, but it's gut health, so I'm going to run with it. And then how that affects the rest of our ability to think, move, energy, all of this sort of thing as well.
Absolutely. There are approximately 100 trillion microorganisms in our gut.
That's a big number.
That is a big number. We also have about 30 trillion cells in our body. So the chemical messages that our microorganisms, our gut bacteria, for instance, are sending out to our body far outnumber the chemical signals that we are sending. So that's why they have such a big role to play in our body. Our gut bacteria produce our vitamins. They produce 90% of the neurotransmitters, the hormones that our brain uses to control the rest of our body.
90%.
Yep, 80 to 90%. 80% of melatonin, for instance, is produced in the gut. That's what helps us regulate sleep.
Sorry. So I got to go there. So if people are having trouble sleeping, there's a very good chance a big part of that is their gut health.
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yep. 80% of our immune cells reside in our gut. So if we don't really nurture those 100 trillion new best friends that we have, they're not going to look after us. It's actually quite simple.
Yeah, wow. That's huge.
It is.
That's huge. So really our gut does control us. It's not just this male thing. It actually is real.
It is known as our second brain. And to understand the link between it, when you need to get up and speak in front of 1,000 people, where do you feel it?
In your gut.
In your gut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So then take that a little bit further. I'm at work. I've got a meeting. I'm a little bit nervous. I've got a deadline that's coming up that I need to meet, or I've got to speak in front of 1,000 people. Go into a little bit more depth as to how that gut health affects what I do and what can I do to make those situations easier for me.
Okay. When we're talking about, for instance, nervous system control by the gut, so how we respond to situations and nervousness or angstiness or irritation or anger, any of those sorts of emotions, we're not going to get a quick fix gut health wise. We need to take a longer term view to nourish our gut health, to keep us, ticking over pretty well. There are certainly things that you can do to, calm nerves. What we want to do is have all the, good gut bacteria producing the neurotransmitters, the hormones that our brains use, so that we don't get nervous in the first place.
Oh, wow. So we don't get nervous.
Or that, it all comes down to stress resilience. We can't avoid stress. It's how we react to it.
Right.
And, of course, that isn't just the brain. That includes, that involves the adrenal glands as well, further down a hormonal pathway. So we need to take a big global picture to health. We need to take everything into account. But gut health responds quite quickly to if we give our gut bacteria what they need and actually remove what they don't need, which is actually probably almost as important these days, they respond really quickly. So you can get changes in your hormonal patterns, in 1 or 2 weeks even.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say I've been the person I'm not exercising a lot. I'll walk the dog every now and then. I'll sit and watch movies with a bag of CCs or watch the footy with pizza and Coke on a Friday night, something like that. And my diet's there's some good stuff in there, obviously, but for the most part, it's not that good. So it sounds like my gut health is not terribly exciting. Those 100 trillion bacteria in there, they're not excited by what I'm doing.
That's correct.
How long does it take to sort of turn? Because you said the emotional responses and things in a couple of weeks can be pretty much turned around. Is that the whole thing being fixed, or is it a different story altogether?
Oh, no. Look, it's a spectrum. You can make changes to gut health very quite quickly, but once again, to get lasting optimization, it can take years.
Right.
So it's a bit of both, to be honest. Our gut bacteria eat very simply. They eat prebiotics, which come in the form of fibres from our food, from our fruit and vegetables, and yeasts from our system. A bit of trivia, when we sleep 6 to 8 hours a night, which has to be done in the dark, regardless of what people want to say. That's why shift workers have chronic health conditions. Apart from anything else, our gut bacteria consume up to 1 kilogram of yeast every night.
1 kilogram?
Yep.
That's huge.
It is. Yes.
So where does that yeast come from?
Well, yeast are resident in our bodies.
Okay.
Yeast are resident everywhere at the minute, but yes, in our bodies. And if we don't have enough good gut bacteria that actually eat them, they explode. And they can cause issues like leaky gut and other inflammatory conditions as well. just because they're very irritating if they get out in numbers. So it's something that we need to control. So we need to actually really nurture our good gut bacteria. They also, control the bad bacteria. It's like a neighbourhood watch scenario. If we support our community really well, the crime's not going to get in. And the balance between good and bad bacteria is about 9-1 under good circumstances. And so if you let the good bacterial numbers drop, the bad guys can get in. And that's when we have problems.
Okay, so now that affects obviously every aspect of life when we're dealing with this. And males, females, is there any difference in how this works? Does it affect everyone the same?
Bit of a complex thing. The processes are pretty much the same from the gut perspective, but hormonal fluctuations in women will have an effect as well. So that's not really a very direct answer, but it's
obviously
complicated.
it's a very big,
it's complicated.
very big question.
I mean, if you provide the gut bacteria with what they need to thrive, food-wise, they will.
Okay. So,
there's no complexity in that at all. You provide them with the correct prebiotics to support their growth, and they'll thrive.
Okay, so to that extent, so long as we're looking after it, it's going to have pretty much the same effect.
That's correct. It's a no-loss scenario. Okay. You may as well.
Yeah,
but it
absolutely.
has huge benefits for health and energy and being able to think and all of that sort of thing.
Okay. So now if you're obviously a naturopath, a no-nonsense naturopath,
Indeed.
no less. If people are feeling sort of a little bit out of whack, like they're getting their hunger, okay, I know what I need to do is I need some more fats and proteins and that sort of thing ready for the afternoon or waking during the night or these types of things. They're just feeling a bit lethargic. Something's not quite right with me. I don't know what it is. How do you work out what they need?
How do I work out?
Yeah, as a naturopath, what do you?
Speaking to them. Basically, I don't, there are lots of testing protocols you can go down to test things. And, if you are a high-powered CEO and you just need to get this stuff fixed, then maybe you can do that as well. But, in the hour or so that I take to spend with new clients, I get to hear a lot about how they're feeling and what they're doing. The things we need to look at is, are you eating enough? Because a lot of people don't eat enough.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought we were eating too much.
Well, some people do that too.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, particularly business women, tend not to eat enough because we're actually trained not to eat too much.
That's a societal thing?
That's a societal thing.
Okay.
Once again, bad health messaging.
Yeah.
A good proportion of people are dehydrated. And that's something that needs to be addressed for not just gut health, because the bacteria need to have water around them as well. But every cell in our body requires water to be able to function. Everyone needs, here's the thing, 35 mils per kilo if you're sitting down not expending too much energy during the day. 35 mils of water per kilo.
Okay, so that's a pretty good way of judging how much water I need to drink to start with.
Now, if people, the major objection I get is I have to go to the toilet all the time. If that's an issue, it's generally because your nervous system is so dehydrated and stressed by sugars normally. It's just like if we give a kid a bowl of lollies, they get,
Yeah.
That's a technical term. So does our nervous system if it's flooded by too much sugar. Too much sugar and dehydration is a very, very bad thing. And apart from anything else, it will really set off your nervous system. Your bladder is full of nerves.
Oh.
Yeah. So if you're constantly scared that you can't drink water because you need to go to the toilet all the time, there's something else going on that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
Not drinking water is no excuse.
Okay. Now, I know I talk to people a lot about the water factor. Do you have a magical silver bullet for how to get people to remember to drink their water? Because that's one of the biggest factors I come up with is people, like, I just forget. And I know myself sometimes, if I don't have my water bottle sitting on my desk, I'll forget because you get busy doing stuff.
There is no doubt that some people are more drawn to drinking than others. That sounds really bad, but you know what I mean.
Can we clarify the drinking meaning water?
Yes, I'm talking about water.
Okay, good.
However, for a lot of people, I just have to call it. Put on your big girl panties and stop being a princess.
Right.
Just do it. It's a habit, apart from anything else. Set a reminder on your clock. Get a water bottle that's got, you know, reminder times on it or something. There are lots of tools out there, but actually what it comes down to is you're not allergic to water. I can't drink water. Yes, you can drink water.
There's no excuse, really.
There's no excuse.
Okay.
Now, if you suffer symptoms from drinking water, then there's something else going on that needs to be addressed. But a lot of it's mindset. Put a little bit of lime juice with it.
Yeah.
Carbonate if you want. Having said that, carbonation can make people hungry. There's another hormonal response that gets in the way sometimes with carbonation. So, you know, it depends on the person. But just do it. Nike, it's a good thing. Yeah. It's a good slogan. Just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the water is an essential element as well. It is
something that we have the ability to control. There are so many things in life that we can't control that affect our health. This is something that's a no-brainer. And actually, with a bit of practice, and not that much practice, I mean, you're talking a week or 2 or 3, it actually can become a no-brainer. Because once your cells are rehydrated, because some people have been chronically dehydrated for 30, 40 years, once you actually get some water into your system, you'll actually function so much better that you won't want to go backwards.
Yeah, wow. So basically what you're saying is it's really putting some thought into what we need. Maybe getting going and seeing someone like you and going, okay, this is how I'm feeling, this is what's going on. What can you suggest? What can we do here? And then putting a little bit of a plan in place and some options, and then just following it. It's not that hard. It's I guess being self-aware and being planned to deliberately do things, not just float around and do whatever happens.
Yeah. I find there are 2 things that make the difference between my successful clients and my non-successful clients, or people that aren't as successful as they should be. Sorry. Education is one. And it doesn't have to be dedicating hundreds of hours. Understanding why it needs to happen makes a huge difference, because then it becomes innate. It becomes sensible to do it and not sensible not to do it. The other thing is accountability. And a lot of the people I see, my clients that I actually work with, I check in every week, so that little things that crop up as your health changes, because the change can be quite significant. As things change, we can embrace the good bits and tweak the bits that mightn't be as good, so that it turns into something good. So you can snowball forward rather than not really achieving anything.
So with the clients that you work with, do they normally have something written down roughly that they need to follow that you're checking in with, or do you check in on certain elements of what you're talking about with them?
What I normally do is they would have a written report so that, they can actually physically have something. But then I would refer them to a video on this, or a, seminar or whatever, so that they can actually learn about what they need to do, so that they really internalise it. And then, of course, they have to say that they did it when they check in with me the next week.
That's always the hard part.
That's the no-nonsense bit.
Yeah.
It's not hard. It becomes an enjoyable thing then. It's kind of a little bit of a challenge rather than something that's, my doctor told me I had to cut out red meat,
Yeah, no, I totally get that, because when I run, one of the mastermind groups I run is a PT mastermind. So we do half hour of personal training with a personal trainer, and then we go jump in the ocean. And at first, people are like, there's no way, this is going to be horrible. I don't really want to do it. You signed up for it. I know I'm going to do it. And they do. And once they've done it a couple of times, it's almost like they turn around and go, we can't wait to go jump in the water after the personal training session. It becomes a reward sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's one of those, I don't want to do this, but, I really enjoyed that. That was actually really good. And it sounds like it's the same thing when we're talking about food as well.
Look, food, life in general. I mean, food is so basic to our need to survive. We can choose it to be dull and boring, or we can choose the, great big banquet table with fun and laughter and joy. And even if you're doing it by yourself, you can still create that. It's amazing to me that I see people that come, and they come back about 3 or 4 weeks later and, number one, bound up to where I am. but say, I had no idea there could be so much joy in food, in real food.
Yeah, wow.
Because we've just kind of slowly slipped into this decline of processed stuff. And some of it might be fresh sort of food, but it's all kind of prepared and just a little bit artificial.
It's one of those things that I think you've almost got to experience to understand how good it can really be.
Absolutely.
And it's easy to fall into bad habits, but then pulling yourself back on track again and then go, no, this is where I'm going and I know why now because of this scenario.
Yeah. The difference is, and we have discussed it before, the difference is the desire versus the commitment. It does take that mental decision that you are going to make the change and to hammer on forward. And the one thing that I really try to impart is that you don't need to know all the answers yourself. That's why you've come to me or you've sought out a mentor or whatever. But once you've done that and you're confident in the person that you're working with, you actually need to trust the process. Because it is a process. But unless you actually incorporate all that comes with that, you're not going to get to the end point.
Yeah, it's interesting that trust the process. I love that whole saying about trust the process, and it's like anything. We all want the good feelings that we're going to get by eating properly, but we don't necessarily want to do the eating properly to get the good feelings. And was it desire versus commitment?
Yep.
So we want that, but understanding that there is a discipline, like in any habit, there's a discipline that goes with it until it becomes a habit of what you are eating. So which is where the commitment side comes in and where the actual results come from as well.
It's very easy not to do stuff. That's our default.
Yeah.
There is, and it's almost a bad thing to say, but there is no success without discipline.
Yep.
It doesn't matter what way you look at it.
Shame.
Now, discipline doesn't have to be traumatic. As we said, discipline can be a reward in itself because it actually frees you from a lot of stuff.
100%.
But once again, once you make that commitment to do it and the commitment that you're going to become disciplined, you have to trust in the process and see it all the way through.
Okay.
Stopping halfway.
Yep.
Which
is where the accountability side of things comes in that you talked about.
It pays to, and we hear it, surround yourself with successful people.
Yep.
Same thing goes with your health. Surround yourself by people that understand what you're trying to achieve.
Yep. So, all right, I'm going to boil this right down. We're coming to the end of the podcast now. So I'm going to hit you up in a way that we're bringing it down to brass tacks. We're out there. We're just living life. We're not taking too much notice about what we're eating. We're getting through the day. We're all good. But I know I need to make a change. I have to.
Yep.
Especially, I think, usually in your 20s and often mostly in your 30s, most things don't get to you too much and we're pretty okay. So it's like, why do I even need to worry about that? Everything's good. Look at me. And that's probably one of the things too today is look at me. Everything's good. But as we get a little bit older, and often we don't understand it's those younger years in the early 20s, teens, or whatever, that has the biggest effect once we get older. But there's things we can actually do about that at the same time, even if we are down the track 40s, 50s, 60s, or whatever, and that's happening. How can I start today? I finally clicked now that I need to make a change. How can I start today? Give me some very basic fundamentals that are easy for me to start putting into place so that I can make the change.
Number one, if you're in a position to, seek support. Find someone that can help you really be specific about what you need to do. But just in general, cut out processed foods and cut out your sugar. Now, I'm not about cutting things out because we're actually built for abundance, but that's not food. So we need to cut that out.
Yeah.
But when you're cutting that out, you need to replace it with something or your body will and your brain will go. So once again, eat an abundance of proteins, vegetables, not too many fruits because they're pretty high in sugar too, but, some fruits. Surround yourself with beautiful flavours, whether that's vinegars, spices, whatever. Get creative if you can. Drink water, prioritise sleep. Now, to keep your gut nice and healthy, we actually need to most people need to bump up the variety in their fruit and vegetable that they have. Theoretically, we need between 30 and 40 different fruits and vegetables a week just to maintain our gut health.
Different fruits and veggies.
Yeah, which is almost impossible these days. But if you consider, once again, we go back to our traditional Mediterranean diet, consider an Italian soup, for instance. It's got everything in it. It's got meat, it's got legumes, it's got vegetables, it's got absolutely everything, and it sits around and boils and does whatever, but it's amazingly nutritious. Really try to get as much nourishment into yourself as possible. Movement, of course, there's no doubt that getting out for at least half an hour most days of the week and getting your heart rate up a bit maybe too. And as you age, you actually need to build muscle because that drives our metabolism as well. But the mental health benefits of exercise, apart from anything else, are astounding. There's no doubt in the research on that.
So everything you're saying, if I can sum it up like this: eat better, have plenty of water, move your body, do some resistance type of work, and sleep.
Yep.
Have I summed up?
That's pretty
most
much
of what you said.
That's right. But none of that has to be hard. We can actually really get into some really easy habits to incorporate all of that with almost no brain thought whatsoever. And it gives you so much more energy to dedicate to your day, to your work, to your passion, to your relationships, just by doing those sorts of things. And incorporate your work, your passions, your relationships within the exercise or the eating or the whatever.
Yeah, go to the beach with somebody, do some exercise with somebody, eating the right food. We're having meals with people.
Amazing board meeting with a beautiful, beautiful food provided.
Yeah.
It's all possible.
Yeah, it's really, like you said, there's a few basics. Just have a bit of a plan. Work with somebody if you can. Have a bit of a plan on how you're going to make this the most part of what you're doing. Really
elevate your life. Think of it that way. You're really taking it to a new level.
Yep. Rochelle, this is fantastic. It's, in some ways, it is ridiculously simple and basic what you've said, but in other ways, it's incredibly profound as well. And how important it is for us to actually do these 5 things, really.
Yeah.
And it affects every aspect of our life, at work, at home, our play, our ability to have less aches and pains and be able to move better and enjoy things. And, down the track, you want to be able to play with your grandkids.
Absolutely.
You don't want to be able to, saw that, son.
And there's no downside.
Yeah.
It's not a cost, benefit analysis here. It's just all positive.
That's actually a really good point. There is no downside by doing this.
What is, if there is something stopping you from doing this, we need to look further.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, just before we finish, there's 2 questions I always ask people. The first one is, because we talk a lot about creating the ultimate tomorrow. That's what Tomorrow Is Not Today is all about. So for you, what is the ultimate tomorrow?
Oh dear. The ultimate tomorrow is freedom. Freedom from constraints, health constraints, freedom from financial constraints, freedom from idiot people around me constraints. Health is the basis of all of that. None of that can be achieved unless you're functioning optimally. And there's so much joy in being healthy.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
Health is the answer to that question.
Second part to that question is, how do you create the ultimate tomorrow?
Persistence and not being too hard on yourself. We are very prone to being too tough on ourselves. Can see someone that's, done really, really well and done 17 days of an 18-day challenge really well, and they trip over on the 18th day and it's all over. When in fact they should be celebrating the 17 days that they did really, really well. So not giving yourself a hard time. And the more health that you have, the better your body has the ability to handle life. Stuff comes at us. That's what life's about. And in fact, that's the joy of life, the fact that we don't know what's coming next.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. That is very true. Rochelle, I really enjoyed today. Today was great. I hope people actually listen or watch and actually put action into this. If people want to talk to you further about their own personal circumstances or whatever and how they can improve their health, how can they get in touch with you?
I am on all the social media as the No Nonsense Naturopath, so you can contact me through any of that. Also, nononsensenaturopath.vip.
.vip.
.vip.
So you're a little bit better as well.
I am.
Yeah, awesome. Rochelle, thank you so much for getting in touch with us. All the information will be in the show notes. We'll make sure people can get in touch with you. I really appreciate your time and all of your wisdom, your insight, I guess, and how not just knowing what, but how to apply it to our life so it can make a difference as well.
Excellent.
Fantastic. And everybody, don't forget, create the life that you want.